So I'm Sean Ward. I am a member of the faculty at Lemoyne College. And I wanted just an immediate quick observation. So I've been teaching for over 36 years. And nowadays, when we go into class, everyone's on their phone, no one talks. So it was really neat to hear and watch you guys chatting up there, and I had to actually interrupt. Usually, in the classroom, I don't have to do that anymore, So thank you for that. It was a nice moment. It was a really nice moment. So as I said, I'm Sean Ward. I'm a developmental psychologist by training. And what that means is that in my curriculum, I learned everything from the womb to the tomb. And have the opportunity to teach courses that correspond to that and some other stuff up on the Heights, which is a really great gig. So tonight, we're going to learn about gratitude a little bit and try to convey to you why we should be grateful people. So to that end, we're going to start out with where we usually end, by saying thank you. First, I want to thank the people from CARE who put together this series and inviting me to be part of it. I'm not sure why I should be amongst those great people, that the other speakers, but it's a wonderful program, a lot to offer our community. Very happy to be affiliated with that. A thank you to IC for hosting us. Father Ryan, thank you so much. The hospitality here is top notch. So, and to that end, keep eating. Feel free to go up, get some more to eat. There's some really good cookies up there, whatever. Don't worry about the speaker. He can handle that. I do teach college students, so as long as you don't snore, we're good. So here's what we're gonna try to accomplish together. So I'm gonna give you a little theoretical background, because that's what psychologists will do. Then we'll look at some of the science, and that'll take us into the benefits of why we should be grateful. And then we'll end up with some tips, and then an exercise we'll do together that's built around the notion of gratitude, okay? So a couple of ground rules. Again, as I said, feel free to help yourself to the snacks. Don't stop. If at any point in time you have a question, I'd like you to ask the question instead of saving it. So just jump in. And I'll intentionally pause to check in, see how you're doing. And if you want to ask, then feel free, okay? So don't wait till the end. We'll have time at the end as well, but I'm comfortable with you asking. And if we go off on a tangent, we go off on a tangent. So what? Okay. So a little bit about the theory and what's the background to this. So after World War II, American psychology was very involved in the war effort in a variety of ways. And then part of the emphasis when the war was over was towards the healing part that was necessary. And what grew out of that was this approach called the humanistic psychology, where people were looking for the good in people. A lot of psychology has an emphasis on what goes wrong, what's broken, mental illness, but the humanists wanted to emphasize the positive, and as a way to maybe help in that healing. It got a mild traction, historically speaking. More recently, and in psychology, recent is like 3 decades ago, this thing called positive psychology emerged. And it really comes out of the same theoretical background, emphasizing the positive and not the negative about humankind. And what is that? And so in positive psychology, there are 6 virtues or 6 pillars that make up the basis of this. These 6 pillars have been incorporated into a project called the Positivity Project. Is anyone familiar with that idea? Okay, so It's real popular in the K-12 school districts, and Fayetteville Manlius does it in some of the schools, I know, some other districts in the area. And it has, one of the starters of this project actually is from Central New York, even though it was created out at University of Michigan in their psychology department out there. In this project, the 6 virtues translate into 24 characteristics. And those characteristics, we most likely possess most of them, but we're really strong at a few of them. So I'm going to go through the 6 pillars and then mention the characteristics that correspond to each pillar. So listen and think about yourself and what of these things do you feel was your strength? Right? Where is your strength? So we start out with the first virtue is wisdom and knowledge. And this is the pursuit of an education. This is the love of learning that hopefully stays with us throughout our lifetime. This speaks to the ability to acquire and use information. So related to this, the characteristics are things like creativity, curiosity, as I said, love of learning, perspective, the ability to see other perspectives, open-mindedness. The second virtue is humanity. This virtue talks about the one-on-one relationships we have, whether they're a personal, intimate relationship, or as a parent, or as a grandparent, aunt, uncle, right? All the different relationships that you can think of that you have one-on-one with someone. What goes into that? So here, an obvious characteristic would be love, kindness, and something called social intelligence, where we listen to the other person's emotions. We know where we're at in our emotional life. Where are they? Third virtue, justice. So this looks at how in our relationships do we relate to the rest of the community, the bigger community. So here we are, probably people from IC, some people from St. Anne's. Parish is a community. Right? How do we get along? And everything here is smooth, right, Father Tom? Everything is smooth, never an issue. No one ever, right? Right? So how do we do that? How do we do that? So teamwork, fairness, leadership are characteristics that would fit into this thing called justice. Next is courage. Where do we find our strength to do good? Where do we find that strength to do good? So bravery, perseverance, integrity, enthusiasm, right? Those characteristics make sense? Can you, right? Can you hear that in that? Temperance is our 5th one. We live in a time of excess. Would you agree? Right? We have to have the latest phone. We have to have unbelievable number of TV channels from cable. And you only can watch one at a time still, right? You like me, you can only watch one at a time, right? And so we live in this time of excess. Temperance says we need to protect ourselves from that excess. We could talk about that, how that hurts our personality and who we are if we get caught up in excess. So, forgiveness, humility, prudence, and one of my favorites, self-control. I did mention the cookies back there, didn't I? So, temperance. Last is transcendence. Last is transcendence. So how do we rise above the troubles in our lives? We all have things we worry about, We all have issues that we're aware of, but we have to rise above them. That's what we think. If we're going to be strong, we need to do that, right? So here, transcendence looks at, beauty and excellence, purpose, humor, another one of my favorite ones, optimism, and the last characteristic, gratitude. Right? So you have these 6 pillars or virtues, and then within each of those there are these characteristics, right? That would be the way we'd operationalize or the way we practice that virtue. And what the Positivity Project says is we want to encourage all of them, but we know that as humankind is, we're strong in a few of them, not all of them. You can't be. And so they'll help us identify where our strength is, and then we can build on that strength. So I hope when you were listening to that list, you something stuck, perhaps, that makes sense to you, and that might be your characteristic. So here's the first check-in. Anybody have any questions about that? Thoughts they want to share about that? Reactions to that?
Yes. I think sometimes when you get in there, it becomes all inclusive or tunnel vision. You get caught up on one thing, and it's hard to keep a perspective, which probably fits right into something.
Right, and so what they try to talk about in the Positivity Project, and we have to think about this, is that the people around us, hopefully we all complement each other. So together, when we have balance in good relationships, we have a variety of these characteristics at work. And we never really get stuck in one, but again, they're psychologists, so they can measure these things and they'll tell you which one is your strongest one, and then the other ones and the other ones, right? But I think particularly, again, hopefully you can see the application of this for character ed, character building in K-12. So K-4, you want to expose them to all of them because this is how we should treat each other. And then as they get into adolescence, recognizing more of the dynamics, the more specific skills we have, our personality is developed more, where might our strengths be? Any other thoughts? Okay. So when you saw this slide, yeah, okay, good.
I'd like to throw in Myers-Briggs study. Myers-Briggs personality, which says we need all of the different gifts and talents and so on.
Right, and the value of that instrument is so that people can identify what their strength is, what they bring to, right, to the team, to workplace, and then we can complement each other. This is your strength, you do this. This is my strength, I'll do that. You can't make somebody funny. Either you're funny or you're not, right? And so, this might get me in trouble, but my wife, when she started teaching, she said, you get the students to laugh in your class. How do you do that? I said, I don't know. Well, I want to be able to do that. I said, no, you're not funny. And I mean that in a really, affectionate way, dear, but you're not funny, And she's like, well, and then after years of teaching, she came home one day, she said, I made a funny today. They laughed. It's okay, every once in a while, But so we have these strengths, and you want to find out what your strength is, or a set of strengths, right? And that's the beginning of being that positive person. Let's not dwell on our weaknesses. Let's dwell on the fact that it's half full, right? It's half full, right? So, we're going to do a little exercise now. And on your table there, you should find some index cards and some pens. There should be hopefully enough. If there's not, we'll get you some more. And I'll apologize up front if all the pens don't work. It's a low budget operation, so it's my fault. Okay? All right, so I'm gonna, on my phone, I've got a timer set for 90 seconds, all right? So I want you to think about all the things that bring you joy. All the things that bring you joy. Go. So going forward tonight, if you think of some other things while I'm talking or whatever we're doing, feel free to add to your list. We're not going to collect them. We're not going to grade them. I'm tired of grading. I'm done with grading. So, but feel free to add some more to it. And I'll explain to you why we did that a couple of times. But the next thing is to talk about a little about the science behind gratitude. Okay? So there actually is a biological background to gratitude, and we'll explain that to us. But it all is tied to a neurotransmitter called dopamine, which you probably have heard of. And my apologies to any medical or biological PhDs in the room. I'm just a lowly psychologist. I don't know a lot about that stuff, but I know a little bit. Dopamine is generated in two parts of our brain. One part has to do with language, speech, and the other has to do with reward. Has to do with reward. And so whenever we do something that we feel good about, dopamine's released. All right? So as you were thinking about things that bring you joy, did you feel good? Does that feel good to do that? All right, so some dopamine got released in your brain, probably. And if we were really geeky psychologists, we would have measured it, and all that jazz, and showed you the level changes, but we won't ask you to do any of that stuff. Anytime we do things that we enjoy or are happy memories, dopamine gets released. And so we need that neurotransmitter. It's important for our well-being. But it definitely is tied to gratitude. If you practice gratitude, you'll release more of it. Right? And that's what we're going to try to demonstrate now, the benefits of trying to produce more of this dopamine. We're going to look at three things: our mental state, physical state, and then our emotional state. So these three buckets, each in turn. Okay? Tremendous amount of work has shown that gratitude does contribute to positive mental health outcomes. Gratitude is tied to positive mental health outcomes. And what it does in all these buckets is that if we can increase gratitude, it diminishes the negative things. And that's why I talked about the positivity project, right? The emphasis is the positive, we're going to be diminishing the negative. So, in general, our mood is improved when we're practicing gratitude. We have this sort of overall well-being when we practice gratitude, right? And it's because of, again, that dopamine getting released in our brain. Cognitively speaking, we become more focused. We're more attentive. And again, we know that when dopamine levels decline, attention and memory starts to decrease as well. So again, if we can boost it, we're better off, right? Next up is physical. So keeping our immune system humming along is important. Things like stress is a big downer. It dings our immune system. When we're stressed, we'll get sick. So what gratitude does is it increases dopamine, which counteracts, right, the stress. And now our immune system gets stronger. Right? So it's really a simple equation of balance that we want to create, where again, we're going to try to balance it to the positive side. We all know that when we're stressed, we don't sleep well. Right? If we're overworked, exhausted, you don't sleep well, even though you're tired, right? So again, figuring out ways to practice gratitude is going to increase the quality of our immune system, which will make it easier for us to relax and sleep. When you do something good for someone, don't you feel pumped up? Don't you feel energized? Right? You think about, you were just looking at that list of joy that you created, you're like, oh, look at all these things I've got. Right? Again, so our energy level increases, right, if we practice this. Last is the idea of the emotional, and certainly all three of these things are tied together. But what gratitude can do, it'll block the toxic emotions. If we're grateful, we don't get caught up in jealousy. If we're grateful, we won't get envious. If we're grateful, we tend not to get depressed. Right? And so, the idea of trying to increase the positive and decrease the negative. We as a culture spend too much time ruminating about all the things that could go wrong. All right, how many people do this? Memorial Day weekend's coming up. You're already trying to check out the weather for Memorial Day weekend. Is it going to be nice out? I want to have that barbecue. I want to go to that parade. And tell me something. Anybody here, can you control the weather? If we've learned anything in our lifetime, we can't control that. But we're going to spend the next 10 days checking. And we can do that so easily now. Let's look it up. We do that, right? Don't we do that? And that's rumination. That's worrying about things that you really can't impact. And again, it's not age specific. We see that starting in teenage, adolescence, this becomes a big problem and it stays with us. It's a real downer to get stuck in that lane. Gratitude is the opposite of that. Gratitude is about looking for that positive, being optimistic. So what, it rains. We'll go out in the rain and watch the parade. If the people in the parade have to march in there, we can stand there and watch it. I might cancel the baseball game, but that's okay. We'll do something else, right? And resilient people create those kinds of contingencies and have other plans and just go with it. But we all know some people who get stuck and spend the whole weekend saying, I wanted to go to the parade, but I wanted to go to the parade. Right? That's water under the bridge now. It's time to move on, right? That's being that negative, not the optimistic, positive, trying to think, what can we control? Right? It says there about relationships, and again, so if you thought about some of the virtues from positive psychology, one of them was one-on-one relationships, and one of them was our relationship with our community, right? So again, it ties back to that idea. Right? These things are linked together, right? So again, I'm going to pause, check in, thoughts, reactions. Now, who's wondering now about the weather in Memorial Day? Raise your hand. Come on, be honest with me.
Just change the station. Just change the station.
Right, just change it. Again, any questions? Well, in the practice, I hope to bring that out to you and how we might practice this, right? So this is the psychology behind it, if you will. And then when we get to the practice, we'll see how we want to convert this into action. But good question. Other thoughts, reactions? Need to write down anything on your joy list? We're good? Yes.
I think it's when one expresses gratitude, it spreads. Like other people catch on, whether it's children or other people who think them, or such unknown positive thing. They catch that and it comes back and they spread it on.
Well, yeah, so it can be contagious, right? Just like the negative can be contagious as well. So we have to be careful of that. We want to put, let's